Let's talk a little bit about food panics, because they're a regular feature of contemporary society in terms of not only general wellness, but definitely in terms of fitness influencing and health propaganda that some people want to concern us with. I've spoken in other videos about the old observation from pharmacology that it's the dose that makes the poison, not the fact that something is poisonous on its own. A lot of food panics are about findings from more or less well-conducted scientific studies, and I do say more or less, about how a particular ingredient that may be found in food is risky for you at some given dose. And very often, it turns out that the dose they're talking about is not one that anybody would actually consume on a regular basis. And the reporting on the science is often the problem, more so than the ingredient or additive itself. That said, everyone is free to come to their own decisions about these things and to protect yourself as you see fit. I understand that what works for my body and what I'm comfortable with in terms of risk tolerance wouldn't work for everybody else. There are absolutely people out there with medical conditions that make certain things that we take for granted very difficult for them. I just had an acquaintance who went through a year of troubleshooting and diagnosis to find out why he felt so rotten all the time, and it turned out it was gluten sensitivity. It turned out it was actually Crohn's. However, the thing I saw today wasn't of that type. The thing I saw today was somebody saying, you need to stop eating oats. Not because there's something intrinsically dangerous about oats or the way they're processed, but because we feed them to horses and therefore they're not appropriate human food. And what this reminded me of was a friend of mine who is from the US and Caucasian, but who lived in China for several years in the 60s and 70s, the way some people of that generation went on their hippie excursions. And every time he hears modern people in North America talk about the health benefits of brown rice versus white rice, he just chuckles and says, Chinese have been eating rice for thousands of years. Brown rice is what they feed the hogs and the other animals. White rice is for humans. He doesn't say that in order to say that everybody has to agree with him. He just says, when people argue from, oh, it's better for you because of this, or don't do it because of that, sometimes their logic doesn't really hold a lot of water. If we really thought that everything animals do should therefore be off limits to human beings, we would be giving recommendations like stop breathing, because every land animal that I'm aware of has lungs and breathes oxygen. You know, your horse breathes oxygen from the air. Your dog breathes oxygen. Your cat breathes oxygen. And we know that there are impurities in the air around us. So maybe the answer is to stop breathing altogether, at least in the open air. I mean, wouldn't that make sense? If things are just intrinsically dangerous and the dose doesn't matter, oxygen is well known as a problem. This is why we talk about free radicals. And indeed, some of the people who talk about how we should go back to ancestral ways and eat more like our ancestors did, or act like more like our ancestors did, how far do you want to go with that? One could make a case that coming out on land is the biggest problem we faced, and that what we should all do is stick our heads under the water and see if our gills turn back on. Because that way, we might be breathing dirty water, but at least we wouldn't be breathing free oxygen like this. And of course I know that nobody's actually going that far, but why not? If the logic holds that, oh, an animal does it, therefore a human can't do it, where do we stop with that? And why does that logic work for people in some cases but not in others? I doubt that you have any more time to be a food scientist than I do, and that you're not going to have time to read every research article that comes out, whether it's a well-designed one that actually studies something valuable or whether it's bullshit. But I do encourage you to think about the logic that people think they're trying to use on you and ask yourself, does this make any sense? Because it's really easy to come up with something that sounds smart in the minute until you generalize and ask yourself, okay, but if this is true, why aren't these other things all true as well? If it someday turns out that oats are in fact problematic, it won't be because we feed them to horses. That's what I'm saying. Come up with a better argument if you want to establish this point. And if people can't establish their point without resorting to this kind of false equivalency or misdirection, I'd be suspicious of what else they're telling us. If you've made it this far in the video, first of all, thank you. Second of all, if this video or any of my others have entertained you, made you smile, taught you something, given you some support on your own journey for mental or physical health and fitness, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if that's too much of a commitment right now, please at least give it a thumbs up. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your attention. Go kick some butt, including your own, in a good way. Love ya.